If all retinoids are forms of vitamin A, why are some stronger than others? And which one should I choose? So we're gonna address that today in part 2 of this mini series within my Skincare Explained series that I've been doing here on YouTube that break down topics like this in a way that makes sense. Because a topic like vitamin A or retinoids can be really confusing, and me being an ST of 8 years now, it can still confuse me. And there's always new ingredients and forms and technology being integrated into ingredients like this. And so it's important to understand and to stay up to date. And so that's what this video is for. Part 1, we addressed how retinoids work in the skin. And today in part 2, we're going to talk about the different kinds of retinoids, which one maybe you should choose for yourself or your client, and addressing contraindications or like who should and shouldn't use this. And then your questions, because I did ask you in part 1 to ask questions, and I'm going to be addressing those in this video. So be sure to grab that pen and paper because you're going to want to take notes, and let's get into it. Oh my gosh, I just got back from the first Rise and Recenter retreat that I hosted in Costa Rica, and I got to connect with 9 amazing estheticians on this trip. We did excursions, we did workshops, we had fun, and we just got to be in nature and just be with each other. And it's just amazing to be surrounded by others who are on the same path as you, people who get it, people who know the struggles of working in this industry as well as opening up a solo practice. And so it's just an amazing time to connect and recenter, and I truly feel drawn to host another one. And so I am in the midst of planning my next retreat for 2027. I literally just had a phone call today with the coordinator to talk about itineraries and when to launch it and all of the like. So please be sure to add yourself specifically to my email list, link down below to add yourself so that you're the first to know. And if you're not in a position right now to go on a retreat or go out of the country, that's totally fine. I have another alternative for you. The Master Your Solo Practice series is happening early fall. It's the beginning of October, and it is my training here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're going to go over things like the fundamentals of offering a really great first service to your clients and my process and what's made our practice here at Kristen Marie Skin successful. And Kristen D is also going to be sharing her method for her Brazilian wax course. You can customize your experience, and I highly encourage you to apply ASAP. There's only 3 spots left for this, and it's going to be a great way to gain knowledge and also meet other estheticians. So I made an analogy in part 1 about a football player, and that football player was holding the football, passes it to the wide receiver, and then the wide receiver runs into the end zone. And that gives you a visual of how vitamin A is then converted into retinoic acid and utilized in the skin. And so when we think about the different types, the answer simply comes down to how many conversion steps it needs to then be used by the skin. Back to the analogy, when you think of this football player, is sometimes defense is really good from the other team, right? Sometimes it requires more than one pass. Sometimes it's not just passing it to the wide receiver and then them running into the end zone. Sometimes they're handing it off to someone else who then swoops around them, and then they pass it to the wide receiver and then they run into the end zone. What I want you to visualize, because there is a certain kind of like ladder or hierarchy of different type of retinoids and how they're used in skincare. So we'll break that down. We're going to talk about the classic forms of retinoids. I'm going to be starting with the least potent form of retinoids, and then we're going to work our way up to the most potent. So number 1 is going to be retinol esters, RETINYL. And the reason why I'm spelling it is because it literally can come down to 1 or 2 letters to differentiate the different forms of retinoids in a product or in an ingredient list. And so retinol esters can also be listed in an ingredient list as retinol palmitate, retinol acetate, retinol propionate, propionate. I always get tongue-tied with these, but the key word to look for is retinol. And simply this form of retinoids requires the most conversion steps or the most passes that need to be done in order to reach the end zone. Retinol esters tend to be a lot more gentle, great for first-time users of retinoids as well as those who have really sensitive skin. And I know that that was a question that I was asked in my last video was, can I use retinoids on dry and sensitive skin? And the answer is absolutely. basically. It just depends on what form, what percentage, the delivery method, all the things that I'm going to go over in this video. So the retinol esters technically is the least potent because it just requires more conversion from the skin. So that means it's just not as quickly delivered. And so when there's less aggressive delivery in a product or an ingredient, it just is less likely to irritate the skin. It's less likely to create redness, and it still can provide some great benefits for the skin as well. It might take a little longer, but you can always up potency or the percentage after you use a product that has a retinol ester in it. But it's just a great one to start with. And then this obviously leads into the next form of retinoids, which is probably the most common form of retinoids, and that's retinol. So spelled R-E-T-I-N-O-L. This is going to have one less conversion than a retinol ester. So there's 2 steps instead of 3. So it is very common to see this in over-the-counter products, and it definitely is a bit more potent, but it is more effective. Is this right for you? Could be, couldn't be, but this is going to be the one that you're going to see the most commonly, and you could see side effects like peeling, redness, dryness when you first start using this. It could be purging as well that can occur. I know that was another question that I had received in the last video. We'll address that later on, but just know it can take time to build tolerance. So don't worry if you already have a retinol product. There's ways to make it work for your skin, and I'll go over that later on. But let's move on to the next one. Retinol, R-E-T-I-N-A-L, or retinaldehyde is the full word for it. And so, but it is the strongest of the over-the-counter retinoids. You're thinking about using one on your skin. This is definitely not the first one you should start with. Want to take the proper steps to introduce this to your skin, but it still technically is a little bit less potent than the next one we're going to talk about because it only has one conversion step to reach the end zone. And so now let's get into the big daddy. The most purest potent form of vitamin A or retinoids is retinoic acid. And so we might commonly see this in dermatology as a prescription known as tretinoin. I would highly recommend that you stick to it being a prescription. I know there's ways to get it without a prescription, but I would definitely consult with a dermatologist before putting pure retinoic acid on the skin, because there are 0 conversion steps required or 0 passes required for this to reach the end zone and get delivered to the skin. So that obviously means more chance for irritation, purging, dryness, flakiness. And while it can address more serious conditions like cystic acne and deeper wrinkles and pigmentation, it's amazing, but it can also not be the right fit for you. And so I would definitely recommend, but can it be effective and work for you? Absolutely. So now that we've talked about like just the general categories of retinoids, very briefly touch on a couple other types. There are other types of retinoids emerging in the industry. That's what's called retinoic acid esters. So you might see this listed as retinol retinoate or hydroxypinocolone resinoate. I totally butchered that, but that's actually what I saw on this product in the ingredient list, and I was wondering like, what is that? And so I guess it's a new class of potentially retinoids that are going to be used in skincare. And so the concept behind those is that it's just delivered differently to the skin. So some parts of it are delivered immediately and some parts of the formulation are delivered later on. So it's just about the delivery system. And so that's what we're kind of starting to see, as well as synthetic forms of retinoids. You might see dapiline, tazarotene, I'm not even going to try to pronounce these, but basically it's just molecules designed to act on retinoid receptors, but they don't necessarily follow like the same conversion pathway. Again, I don't want to get too much into that, but usually we see those as prescriptions that target different things like acne, psoriasis, things that dermatologists are going to be recommending for you if that's the path that you decide to take when it comes to addressing certain issues in the skin. And now I want to go over the contraindications of retinoids, of of who can use this, who it's not recommended for. Again, always consult with your dermatologist if we're talking about dealing with certain skin conditions like rosacea, psoriasis, eczema. If you have a skin condition that you're already on medication for, you're taking medications in general for other conditions, always consult with your provider before integrating retinoids into your skincare routine. But generally, besides that, who should not be using retinoids are pregnant women or anyone trying to become pregnant. There's just not enough research done on retinoids and how they affect the growing baby and the mother, and so it's just recommended that you do not use retinoids, especially retinoic acid on the skin, as well as breastfeeding. Now, there's different opinions about this. You can holler below what your opinion is, but again, consulting with your provider is going to be key if you are currently breastfeeding before you use retinoids on the skin. And the next thing is just what we might look for in the treatment room as estheticians is if the skin is broken, sunburned, irritated, or has a compromised barrier. Definitely not going to want to put a retinoid on the skin if it is compromised or open or irritated in any way, because as we discussed, it can also cause irritation and inflammation in the skin. So we want to be more mindful, and also just using caution when it comes to using retinoids with other exfoliants. So in other videos, I've chatted with you about AHAs, BHAs, and so we just want to, I'm not going to break down exactly what can be and not used together, but just be more mindful, and as well as physical exfoliators like scrubs, and then of course, like I said, prescription skincare as well. And this brings us to the next section of this video, where I'm going to be just breaking down how to select maybe the one that would work best for you and what I would consider when it comes to recommending for your clients as well. And then if I have any other questions I need to address from the other video, I'll end the video with that. First thing I want you to consider is looking at the type. Listed them in terms of potency, and if you're just getting started, I think it would be smart to start with the least potent. If you already have a product that has a stronger form of retinoids, what you can do is, depending on the type of product that it is, and that's the next thing to consider, is just how is it delivered to the skin. Generally in skincare, there's different delivery methods as far as how it's formulated, meaning is it a moisturizer, is it a serum, is it an oil, and there's all different kinds of versions of retinoids now these days, and so how it's delivered to the skin definitely matters. If you are using a serum versus a moisturizer, a serum is going to be smaller molecule sizes, and it's going to be delivered with more of a punch to the skin. It's amazing, but it can, with quicker delivery, can be more irritating, cause more inflammation and redness. And so if you have one that's already in your skincare cabinet and you're like, I don't want to just throw it away, I want to try it out again, what I'd recommend is just adding a couple drops of that to a general hydrating moisturizer or mask, and then applying that to the skin and starting off by using it once or twice a week. That would be, again, a general recommendation. Don't just take my word for it. Talk to your esthetician or your provider if you want more specific guidance for your skin, but that's what I would probably recommend generally. If you already have a product that is a serum or something stronger that's not already in a moisturizer or already in a mask, you can absolutely mix it into something to kind of buffer it in a sense. The next thing to consider is the percentage. On this box here, the Ageless Plus Retinol Overnight Mask, it's marketed as a 0.5%. which you might think that that's like actually a pretty good percentage. The lower it is, the less potent. Higher it is, the more potent. It can be a little confusing though, because I know even on this product, it says that it's a 0.5%. But when you read the box, it says it features a 0.5% retinol complex comprised of a 0.3 retinoid and a 0.2% bakuchiol. Bakuchiol is another term I want to address real quick too. But then that 0.3 and 0.2 add up to that 0.5%. But then when you look at the ingredient list, there are actually multiple forms of retinoids in this product. It is a mixture of retinol esters and retinol, especially if on the box it says a complex or a formulation or a formula that company created to then make that product a certain percentage. So you want to deep dive into the ingredient list. That's the next thing to look at. Don't just look at the percentage and say, oh, well, that's 1%, So that's going to be stronger than a 0.5%, right? But sometimes because of the formulation and just the different types of retinoids that are used together and in conjunction with other ingredients, it could be more or less potent. I mentioned bakuchiol, and bakuchiol has become a much more widely known ingredient. It is a plant-based ingredient for people who want to use more natural ingredients, and not to say that retinoids are not natural. There's just consumers that want to use more plant-based clean products, and so bakuchiol has become more common. Just want to make sure that you know that bakuchiol is not a form of retinoids or retinoic acid. It is just an ingredient that delivers similar benefits to the skin that we've seen in retinoic acid. And so if that's the type of product and ingredient that you would prefer to use, that's totally up to you. It tends to be less irritating, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be as effective or as potent or work the same in the skin as retinoids do. The next thing to consider is this retinoid a over-the-counter or is it a prescription? Because prescription is more than likely going to be a bit more potent, and that's why a doctor is required to prescribe this for you. And so with all of those things said, that is how I think you should determine which retinoid to start with. And of course, you know, we can always try to hop on a call together, or you can consult with your esthetician or your dermatologist to then hopefully decide which one is best for you. But there's a lot of things to consider, and hopefully that broke it down in a way that was easy to understand. I'm going to end it with addressing one other question that I received in the last video. Should we use retinol during the summer or winter? What are some ways to protect your skin while on it? Thank you to the Esti who chimed in and answered this as well. It can be used year-round. There's no specific season that retinoids should be used on the skin. It's not like getting a chemical peel or a deeper treatment. It can be used year-round. What I would just say is that retinoids can make your skin photosensitive. And so it's recommended to only use this in the evenings and to be very good about using your sunscreen or SPF during the daytime, because it can make your skin more vulnerable. I always recommend to clients also to be using an antioxidant to add that just extra layer of protection. Definitely using sunscreen and reapplying that throughout the day while you are using a retinoid. I do know one more person commented on the other video about using it and experiencing purging. I would recommend that you go and watch my other video about skin purging and how to address that. People have a sensitivity to retinoids and just are actually allergic to it or not able to use it. And so I would then recommend considering a product that has an alternative like bakuchiol or other ingredients that probably have like similar benefits, but I will say retinoids have a very specific benefit to the skin that has been proven by science and research. If possible, I would recommend using a retinoid on your skin or working your skin up to that. I really enjoyed talking about this and also just doing it to understand this topic better for myself. If you have any other additional questions, feel free to pop them down below. And I'm excited because I think the next episode I'm going to be addressing a different topic. I haven't really decided like which one exactly I'm gonna do next, but stay tuned. You're gonna wanna hit the subscribe button. And if you've made it to this part of the video, I want you to comment some sun emojis because, you know, we said we were gonna wear our sunscreen if we're using retinoids, so I'm thinking of the sun. Be sure to tune in for the next one of this series. I love you so much, and I appreciate you for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.